Will.
Thank you, Chairman. Deputy Prime Minister, I do welcome the £39 billion investment in affordable and social housing, but given in my constituency of Woking, and actually the Chairman's constituency, it costs at least £200,000 to build a home in the UK. That's roughly 300 affordable homes in the country across each constituency. That's clearly not enough to meet the demand. Why has the government gone for the £39 billion figure? Is it what you genuinely think you can afford rather than what we as a country need?
Well, the country will need way more than what we can give them in terms of housing, but there again, being able to have the construction, to have the facilities to enable to get us to that place is a fine balance. One of the things that has been said to me, relax 106 notices and people can build, and it's, well, no, we need to build communities, so you've got to have the infrastructure in place. That takes time, so that's a figure and the amount we've got, which I believe will be able to create not just houses, but homes and communities, which are incredibly important as part of that. And also, like I said before, challenging the private rental sector as well with the measures we're taking in the Renters' Rights Bill to protect those renters at the moment, which I don't feel the protection has been there for them, which has left them feeling even more vulnerable. So I think that this will make a huge impact. But we have to remember the reason we've got into this mess is for over a decade and a half, we haven't grasped the nettle on this issue. We haven't dealt with the long-term problems of the housing crisis, and we are starting to turn that around. And I think there has been a national conversation about this now, because I don't think there's a family in this country that doesn't know somebody in their family that have got a housing need that isn't being met. And we are working to deliver that, whether that's through the additional money we're putting into skills. We've got an industrial strategy and a skills strategy, which is identifying where we've got skills gaps so we can produce the infrastructure and the homes we need going forward on the government's programme, but also about how we not only get the money for investment in housing, but how we bring that about, whether that's through the National Housing Bank, through financial tractions, through the Affordable Homes programme, through the rent convergence. There's so many different elements, the mandatory housing targets for local authorities that we've brought back in so that they are planning where the housing and infrastructure needs to be in their communities. There's a lot of moving parts that we've grasped the nettle in the first 12 months to say we're going to do it. And I think if you speak to people in the sector, whether that's from homelessness all the way through to developers, they will say they will welcome the changes that we're making. Even local authorities who are concerned about their mandatory targets have recognised that we need to do something, because we haven't for the last decade.
Thank you. Just on that then, so obviously you announced last week, going back to the social homes element, you announced last week that 60% of the new affordable homes will be for social rent. What modelling did you use to get to that figure?
Well, again, what we were saying is, again, within the AHP and what we believe the market could withstand is, we were saying that this is where we think you should get. We wouldn't go beyond that because, again, a number of factors do depend on that, which is around what sites are available, etc., and some of the other changes that we're making. But I think that what we're trying to do is stimulate the market and be very clear on what we want to do. So we've announced, I think it was £12 million investment for local councils to be able to build council homes, for example, and some of the low interest loans for them to be able to do that alongside the rent convergence, which we believe will be able to ramp up the market. But it's really difficult to pin it down, and I don't mean to be I don't really mean to be difficult on this, Chair, but there's a lot of different factors that can be at play. But what I'm trying to do as Secretary of State is give confidence to the market, but also indicate what I think is a target of where we should be reasonably expecting them to deliver.
Just on that 60% going back that you mentioned then, will that count towards your overall 1.5 million target, or is it in addition to the 1.5 million target?
It's within the 1.5 million homes target, yes.
So I don't know if you're aware of the Children's Commissioner's report today in The Guardian, where it outlines some really stark realities of children across England. The fact that we have 4.5 million children in poverty, living in poverty, up to April last year. And I just wanted to read a quote from the report to you, Secretary of State, where it talks about the impact of poverty on some of those young children. It said, From the research, they spoke with candour about the things that most people would consider basic, but which for them are out of reach. A safe home that isn't mouldy, full of rats, a big bed enough to stretch out in, basic food like bacon, a place to do their homework, having the heating on, privacy in a bathroom and being able to wash, having their friends over and not having to travel hours to school, or having a local park to play where the grass isn't overgrown and unusable. The fact is, Secretary of State, we are going to build these homes hopefully to help those children. That will take time. But what's not helping those children now, linked to the fact that we won't see those homes being built tomorrow, is the freeze on the local housing allowance. That is continuing to push many families and children into poverty. Is the case still being made to have the local housing allowance reviewed?
Well, what I would say, Chair, is at the forefront of my mind in everything that I do, not least the pressures surrounding local government and some of the fundamental services they provide to children and young people, is the housing crisis that we've got. And we've got 165,000 children in temporary accommodation, and that's not acceptable in our country to be in those circumstances. And I've met with Arab's family a number of times about how we ended up in a situation where a young child lost his life because of the housing conditions that they faced. So there's been a number of priorities and pressures that we've been trying to alleviate. The work we're doing on homelessness, the building the homes that we desperately need, the work that we're doing to challenge landlords to make sure their houses are fit and habitable. But equally, there are also other pressures that families face. The government spends £34 billion per year on housing support, including £12 billion in private rental sector. And the local housing allowance rates were last increased in April of 2024, and that's £7 billion over 5 years. Look, I'm not here to defend the crisis that we inherited. What I'm saying is it will take us time to alleviate some of those pressures, but what I've focused on is both short-term in providing support to families, and we've done that across government, including with the Employment Rights Bill, the free breakfast clubs, the rollout of free school meals, as well as the over 3 million people getting an instant pay rise because of the changes we made to the minimum wage. And then longer term, looking at, the only way we're going to fix this crisis is not by giving more money to private landlords for people who should be in social housing. We need to have a social housing revolution, and that is why I've been so bold as to push for the biggest amount of increase in the affordable homes programme alongside the rent convergence, which the market will tell you they've really welcomed this because they've been asking for years for us to make these changes, and previous governments have not allowed that to happen. We're very clear that we've got a short-term deal with the pressures that families face, and that's around the cost of living as well. But in the long term, the only solution to the housing crisis in this country is to build more homes. And I sat on a platform, a manifesto to do that. And I think the last 12 months have proven that I mean what I say and I say what I mean. And we've brought forward many changes, including the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, which is going through Parliament now, the National Planning Policy Framework, the large amount of investment the government is putting into housing is showing that actually we mean business. But it's not going to turn around overnight. But we are alleviating short-term pressures at the same time as we've got to fix this crisis in the long term as well.
We are, and that's the long term, but with all due respect, Secretary of State, data is showing a massive decline in house building starts. The sector is saying they do not have the skills and the workforce. A number of builders are saying that they do not have confidence because some of the regulation, which they rightly welcome on building safety, is holding up those houses coming forward. When you've got data and a report from the IPPR in January this year showing that 90,000 families will be pushed into poverty because of the shortfall in the local housing allowance, is that not a political choice by the government to continue to freeze that and push those children into poverty?
Well, I think it's important to state that any further decisions, like I say, we've already put £34 billion a year into housing support, and we've increased that in April of 2024. But the decisions on local housing allowance will be made in the round at the budget, alongside the other decisions that the government have already made, which is it has had an impact on families. We're rolling out in September more childcare places and more support for families in work. And families will tell you the cost of childcare and the support around the school meals, the school uniforms, the breakfast clubs, these will all have an impact in the round, including the work that we've been doing on the Employment Rights Bill, which will give families more security as well. I think that you can't take one in isolation. A government has to have a number of priorities. We are investing in putting money into local housing allowance, but the truth is that the way to fix this problem is not by rents increasing significantly by having private landlords that are putting social tenants in private landlord accommodation. The way to fix this problem is by having more social housing for people that desperately need it.
It is. And just finally on that, again, even when the National Residential Landlords Association are telling us about the impact of local housing allowance, the very same children that we need to be in the breakfast clubs, their parents who need the jobs from the Employment Rights Bill, the flexibility they will get from being able to request flexible working, the jobs that will be created, the many millions of people that will see their wage increase from the increase in the minimum wage, they all still need a place to sleep.
That's right.
And that's not going to happen because we can't build the homes fast enough. So in the interim, they are renting within the private rented sector. But a lot of them are not able to rent locally because of the freeze on the local housing allowance.
I think, again, Chair, what we've done on top of that is the Renters' Rights Bill, which is protecting many, and the homelessness prevention and the extra money that we've set aside for that, which local councils can look at some of that in ways of preventing homelessness as well, but also around ending Section 21 no-fault evictions and some of the challenges that families face that lead them to homelessness in the first place, which we've seen where landlords will evict people, families with no excuse, and then we'll ramp up the rent and put somebody in because the housing market is in such a dire situation. So we've been taking measures to try and prevent some of those erroneous type of practices at the same time as building the homes that we need and supporting families now through a number of measures to alleviate the pressures, the financial pressures that they're under. But the rents is one element of pressures on families, but there's a whole host of other pressures that families are facing, which we're trying to support them with as well.